Welcome to our very first live show from the Community Lounge at Runcorn Station, kindly provided by Avanti. Thank you very much, Avanti. This is Getting on Track Together. My name is Nathan, and today we have Junior.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest with us, who you can see here. Hi, Tim.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a bit of a mix going on. We're going to have some topical debate probably a bit later. We've got some chat coming up. A little bit of live music as well, maybe later, Junior.
Yeah, definitely.
He's got his guitar ready, so that should be good. What we're going to do today is we're going to get straight into our very special guest. Although knowing you a little bit about it, I think this is very special.
That's the special, just guest will do. I'm very happy with guest.
Tim is your screenwriter, stage everything really.
Yeah.
You're songwriter, playwright, screenwriter. You do all kinds of different things, don't you? And for anybody who doesn't know you, we've drawn up a few questions so that we can delve into that a bit.
Yeah.
But one of the first things we talked about doing every time we do this show is having a quote. So we do a quote of the day. And I asked you just before we started, didn't I, if you got a particular quote.
Sure, not many people that you ask this actually have it in their wallet
on
a gold piece of metal, which I actually do.
Which I think is
brilliant. Yeah. It's great. In between the now useless credit cards and shop cards, to have this, and I had about 12 of these made when my dad died, and I gave them to my family and all of my relatives. And it was a quote that my dad, who was a robust Yorkshireman, but a phenomenal and effortless altruist and philanthropist, really, in many ways. A painter and a great painter of people, used to say all the time. And it's here inscribed as this quote, which is always judge someone by how they treat someone of no use to them.
We said before, it's so lovely that is.
Well, it is, yeah.
A profound quote.
And it's very easy to be generous to people when you think you're going to get something out of them, but actually the real generosity of spirit is wants no reward.
Yeah, I totally agree with
I thought it was quite good when you said, have you got a coat? And Tim went, it just so happens.
Yes, yeah, right, so here it is, carved into a piece of metal.
So, like I said, we are live from Runcorn Station. You might hear sound effects around. They're not effects, they're real life. We've got the platform just over here. Lots of busyness going on around, and
life.
This is going to be a weekly thing every Monday.
Yeah.
So what better way to start it than with Tim? So, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you ended up here today?
Well, here, I mean, I'm no stranger to this station. The train that's leaving now is the one that I probably used to get, and I have got since I was 18, probably earlier. When I started out at school, I wanted to write songs, do exactly what you do, and I had I also a teacher who probably is no longer with us now. He's a guy called Ken Taylor, who, when we were in the third year, which would be, I don't know, about year 10 now in New Money, he turned up and said, look, I've got the school to buy us 6 guitars. 6 guitars, and they were the guitars that came in little cardboard coffins. They're not expensive guitars. Would people like to take them home? And he was a bit of a rocker, Ken, and he had a band and he played after school. And bless him, in many ways, he probably wasn't the greatest teacher in other regards, but my God, he had an interest in music. And he did, I owe so much to him because he gave us those guitars, and I said, right, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna teach myself. Yeah. Because actually, at that stage, as you know, you can follow a diagram. You want to do a D chord, you put no, and there was no kind of finding the note like you do on a violin or on a cello. It's that you get that right, and gradually the chord will come out of the mist at you. And so I started playing and then started writing, wanted to be a songwriter, and entered song competitions all over the place and on children's telly. And that's largely how I spent my school years, was writing songs. And then because I was interested in musicals that were out at the time, not all musicals.
There was one?
I made, at the time, I would put down rock operas like Superstar, Evita, Blood Brothers, which was a kind of folk opera, kind of things that I felt were in touch with me. Whereas, the Rodgers and Hammerstein world of, the 50s, brilliant as they were, weren't my world. That wasn't where I was. And so when at the age of, I don't know, about 15, 16, I wrote probably a bit younger actually, 14, I wrote a rock opera for our school Christmas play.
Wow.
And it was about 25 minutes long, and it was a rock nativity, and I think at some point every aspirant writer of musical theatre has to come up with a rock nativity, and we went back. I remember our car broke down. We were supposed to be going on summer holiday to Europe, and it's the first time we would ever have been to anywhere that wasn't Yorkshire. My dad's an expat Yorkshireman. They just take you back to Yorkshire. That's all you ever go to. But we were going to go on this holiday. The car was an absolute crock, and it broke down. And I decided to spend that summer. Right, okay, I'll do it. I will write this thing. I'll write this, and it wasn't that long, 7 or 8 songs. But took it into school and gave it to the music teacher, and I said, look, Mrs. whatever her name was, I've written a rock nativity for the school Christmas play. And she went, oh God, you've not, have you?
That's positive, isn't it?
No. And I realized it's because she had got her Christmas. She got it planned. We were going to do Run with Torches, and then we were going to do 2 madrigals and a few readings. And that was it. This threw a huge cat amongst the pigeons. But the sixth formers who were interested in doing that, because they didn't want to just do torches, and they, no matter how good or bad it was, they preferred to sing a song. They took it over, and they helped train the choir, and they helped me do it. And from that point on, I kind of thought, this is that. And using songs, using music in a format that's longer than 3 minutes is really interesting, because it allows you to go to places that the written word. By the way, at that stage, no way was I going to be a playwright. No way was I interested. That was for other people. I don't know where playwrights came from. They came from Planet Playwright, and they landed being playwrights. And the idea of becoming one, actually starting to write words without music, only happened because I went on a writing course just before I went to university with Willie Russell and Danny Owertu, the writer and director. And on the first, and I thought it was a songwriting course. Really, I mean, I felt it. I went with my guitar. Everybody else went with laptops. I went with a guitar, and they said, "Look, can you just write 2 minutes of dialogue or monologue?" It was, in fact, on the very first night, literally only just unpacked on this kind of writing course called the Arden Foundation in Hebden Bridge, and of course you had to do it, and the brilliant thing about that was that you had to do it without plotting, without thinking, I'm not a writer, I can't do that, what? No. You actually said, it's too late for that, just do it. And we're going to do it, and we're all going to read them out after tea. And so I went and wrote about the only thing I knew, which was just a kid who wants to write songs on the guitar. Yeah. And I think because it was unthinking and it was honest, it meant that, accidentally that very first Tuesday night, I'd written the first piece of theatre. Really.
Right.
That's crazy. What stood out was when you were saying about after you'd taken your rock opera to the teacher, the sixth formers helped you out. And something big that I try to talk about a lot is the effect that we all have on each other and the difference that it makes to people's lives. But how those sixth formers wouldn't have even thought about the fact that if we help and do this, then Tim Firth is going to be. Whereas if they hadn't have done what they did, then maybe wouldn't have. Maybe we have knocks sometimes change how we.
You have no idea.
So the effect that they had, would that have helped you with?
Yeah, of course. And it's that accidentally. It's basically like if life is one large pinball machine, and we have no idea where that one comment that we make or that one act is going to send that ball of somebody else's spirit of their own desire. And I remember. Having a reunion a few years back, and I don't really do reunions, so for various reasons, I try to keep looking forward. I mean, that's not because I love the people, and it's sometimes it's great to look back, but it's often bad to look back too much. And I think I went to one of these things, and this lad came up to me, a very successful guy now, journalist on the BBC, and he said. I had a really bad time at college, and I did. When I started, I had a really, really odd time in the first time. As a lot of kids do, I think. You move away, and that's the reason to go, because it's literally like being thrown onto a roller coaster ride and thinking, if I can make the first plunge, then the rest of it is all sort of going to be all right. It's just hanging on that first one. And I'd had a rough time. I didn't realise it. And a couple of years after that, towards the end, he said I was going through a really bad time. And he said, he said something that I said to him, and he repeated it.
Right.
And even then, even now, I thought,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
What? And he said, that's the thing that made me stay at college.
Right.
That's the one thing that made me stay at college. And at a time when I thought that nobody else was interested or bothered or cared, you said this one thing. And I kid you not, at this time it was literally like, let's go for a walk or have a cup of tea or something. It was the tiniest pinball movement.
Not to him, though.
But not to him. And similarly to me, what those sixth formers taking that song, they just, maybe they just wanted to, they didn't want to, they wanted to do something else that lunchtime. They fancied singing, or they just desperately trying to get out doing torches at the Christmas show. It was nothing to do with thinking we're going to launch Tim Firth's, ambition to be a writer. What would they care about that? But don't matter.
Yeah.
It did. It did.
And by your time, whatever you said to the friend, that's just showing your nature, isn't it? That's just to you. That's just second nature to just say something, be kind, give somebody time, and it's something we talk about a lot. Really, is how powerful it can be just to be able to smile at somebody and be able to just give someone a moment of your time. It can really.
And the thing is, it may not. You've no idea what effect anything that you proffer is going to have on somebody else. The only thing that's sure is that if you don't, it won't.
Yeah.
And also, you get a bonus from it yourself. Thing it gives you that dopamine effect. You get happy hormones. All around, right?
Because for me, if I'm very self-critical, as I think a lot of people are, and most people are, and to a degree. It would be great for people to understand how self-critical everybody is, rather than thinking it's just you. But actually, that self-criticism will lead you to think that if there's a circumstance where I felt I should have done that, or I should have said something, that will stay with me all day.
And one of the only a couple of years ago, I'm 44 now, so most of my life I lived with the self-criticism. And we've had a couple of conversations a little bit about this. But something that really changed my thinking, and something that I really like to shout about, is the realisation that just because there's a thought in your head, it doesn't mean that you have to go with it, and it doesn't mean it's true, it doesn't mean it's real. The same with feelings, they can be inspired by thoughts and learned behaviour. So I really love that you touched on that, because so many people, pretty much everybody that walks around is self-critical, and a big part of what we're trying to do with this is encouraging people to switch it, so that by practicing and training yourself, you can end up being the opposite, and so you can be self-encouraging, and you can change that what you've always been doing in your head.
It's a choice. You always have more choice than you think you do. And you were saying you came to see that show, Junior, that I did with Gary Barlow. And actually, as you know, in the middle of the second act of that, there's a lot about this physical representation of exactly what you're talking about, which is that the voice in the head that says, do you know what? No one cares. And you think, even people like you think, and that's the other problem, is that when you've had some degree of success, or your life seems to have a patina of achievement, people think, well, they're all right.
That's it. Yeah. People don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And what you said before as well, with the quote, and what you said to that guy, is probably the way you've been brought up. Because I'm sure if that was your dad would probably be saying to you, probably what you said to that kid. Don't I don't know what it was, but to keep him going, kind of thing.
And Dad Dad would lead by example. He wouldn't just say it; he would do it. And Dad was the guy who went and spoke to people. You gradually be aware in cafes or in restaurants or wherever that he wasn't really listening to you. He'd spotted somebody who needed a word. And I think it's that native teacher, because of course as a teacher you spend your life you know, good teachers, spend your life scanning that room and just working out where everybody is, because you've got a load of people in that room, 20 to 30 kids who have all got their own baggage, and they've all got their own stories.
Yeah, definitely.
And you've got to spot that.
What would you say is your what gets you out of bed? What's your motivation in life now?
I think it is what it was on day one, which is just to write the next best thing, the thing that makes me happy. You know, that in a way, I've always been lucky and cursed by the fact that you care hugely about what you're writing, and that there is another way of making money out of putting words on a piece of paper, and it involves your you being far less exposed. Yeah. That as a writer. Yeah, exactly. And if you, like anything, if you know, when somebody you love dies, you think, wouldn't it be much easier to just actually not care about anybody? Wouldn't it be easier to waltz through life and think, you know, I will build this. The shell I build to protect is that I don't care, and actually that. We know you can't live that. That's a poor life. That's a poor life to live. And actually, creatively, it's the same thing that you know. I could write about things I wouldn't go and see. I could write things I didn't care about.
Or
and actually,
if just for the money as well.
Just for the money, and actually, you know, just become a. There are routes of, you know, becoming a writer where you're far more protected, because actually, if things then don't work, or for whatever myriad of reasons. The things that you write don't get made, then you don't care. But of course, I've spent my life being absolutely wellied by that, by you know, by things not happening, or for whatever reason, things not working out. And you know, in my line of work, I'm not a novelist. I'm writing something that will be the spine of other people's artistic endeavour, from costume to direction to acting to music, and all of those are areas that I remember watching the documentary as a kid, and it was a very simple documentary, a wildlife David Attenborough thing about turtles who lay their eggs at the top of the beach, and it was about 20 metres for these eggs to get to the sea, and it just took you through. And if they get this far, this will get them, and your entire creative life. I always come back to these tiny turtles trying to get to the beach, and the one that does out of the 300 that sets out has gradually been picked off by a different set of criteria or circumstances over which they have no control. Yeah. And being a writer for stage is a bit like that, really. And the ones that actually make it through, you really have to celebrate, because behind them are an immense number of things that don't. So in a way, the thing that gets me out of bed is that I care about all those little turtles that I set going. Every single one of them. Yeah. You know, it'd be very easy not to, and just think, oh well, you know, only one. Sorry lads, but only one of you is going to make it. I can't be like that. Everything that I'm doing now, and I look down the line and look and think, what am I wanting to do over the next couple of years? All of them make my heart turn over a bit. They all think, wow, oh my God, that'd be great. And I want to stay like that, because then, you know, maybe I'll be lucky enough to die thinking that I've not yet done my greatest work, rather than live in the shadow of something that I know was better than anything I've done since.
Yeah. I think what stands out as well, just from when you were saying that, about how much you care, is that you've come along here, you know, I just asked you, you've come along here, given up your time, you're not promoting anything, there's nothing, you know, there's nothing that you're getting out of it, apart from, you know, what. So I really appreciate it, but I just wanted to say that shows, it's not words, is it, it's actions.
Absolutely.
As well as you're saying these things, it's like, being here is proof of that also.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
so thank you.
And I think in a way, you know, and also, you have never any, in the job that I do, I mean, I love calling it a job. It's never ever felt like I've ever had a proper job in my life, and because if you do your hobby for a living, you're very lucky. You're very, very lucky, and you have to just keep slapping yourself and saying, just remember, just look at, don't get used to this. Just every so often, my dad would always say, just look, just stop and look around, you know. And the only people that have ever said that to me are people who've who've kind of have known what it is,
Yeah.
who've had that slap in the face. You know, there was a point, you know, where I remember standing in a field with. I've done it with a couple of a mate of mine's, famous director now, and Gary. You know, where we stood in a garden and gone, it's all right now.
Yeah.
Let's just say this is you know, no matter how bad it's been, and it has been bad, and it will have been bad for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But just take the moment, because if you don't take that moment, I'm the worst person. I find it, I really struggle, because you know there's always that. No matter how high you get, you are still the fear of falling just increases, and actually you just have to keep looking down the road, because if you look down too much, then you will fall, you know. And it's that thing of just keeping your eye on the horizon and not learning fear, you know. That's the greatest thing.
Yes, I like that. I agree with that.
Can I ask, you know, some people who get there, who get to the pinnacle, some people start believing in self-importance too much. Are you ever scared of like rejection? You know, as a writer, writing stuff and then thinking that this is great, and then you go somewhere and then someone go, oh no, that's.
Oh yeah. I mean, that happens, but that has happened all my life. I've spent my life at school. I've spent my life giving in homework. That's all I ever do, because I give things to people, and every time it happens, you think, I have no idea. You know, I know what I think about this, but I have no idea, because of course you're not. They will come from their own world, with their own likes, their own predilections, their own agendas, and you have no idea what those are. And actually, what the only thing that you have to learn is, don't take anybody else's word as gospel, and actually think that somebody has access to a higher power. There's a great book, become a seminal book, called Adventures in the Screen Trade, and it's often quoted by writers, because it's written by William Golding, who's a famous screenwriter who wrote Butch Cassidy and various other things. And he's a very good speaker on this, very good, wry eye on the whole industry. And the all-pervading, overarching quote that he says that is the only thing that he learned through his years working in film, and it keeps coming back and back and back through this book, that you all have to remember in every meeting you go into, and every reaction that you get, is this: nobody knows anything. Nobody knows anything. Just remember that. Nobody has access to a fount of truth. They'll be reacting. Sometimes they'll just be saying, you know, they'll be saying things because saying something in the room justifies their paycheck.
That's so true. That is so true in stuff, because I'm talking about the stuff. The reason why I mentioned like rejection, because what we're doing, it's good to talk together. Rejection does affect your mental health.
Yeah, of course.
Especially if you're a writer, writing stuff, and you writing songs, writing plays and stuff like that. I write songs, I don't write plays, but I write songs, and you go and some people like it, and some people, and I always think to myself, I like it, and that's the reason why I've played it. And I'm not going to get worried if someone says to me, oh, I don't like it, because they're entitled to their opinion, and I'll just stick with what I know, and I mean, if I was scared of rejection, I'd never go out.
No, absolutely. And those people, like actors, you know, you have to get used to not getting auditions, and it's very, very hard to then tell yourself that is not you, that's just your colour for this role. It's not saying you can't do your job. Acting is a very good example of being an actor. It's not saying actually you weren't good enough, you know. And I've been able to say to actors, you know, in auditions, you were great, you're just not right for this. And you can see them not quite believing it. It's that part of me would not quite believe that. And the greatest joy is then you then go back to them and say, you know, I said he wasn't right for that. Well, you are right for this. And let's do this. You know, because it's such there's so much blood in the mix in this particular industry, because like anything, you do lay your heart a bit bare. You know, I'm not writing episodes of a soap opera here. You know, which would be a much more secure and regular. You know, but you know, the last thing I wrote, from start to finish, I suppose, on and off, will have taken me 4 or 5 years. You know, you know, and you imagine that at the end of 5 years, if you've done anything else, you think, oh come on, it's got to be good. It's got to take it all. So look at the work I put it. Look at it. And actually, no, you know, there's no guarantee that anybody will go and see it. It's a huge high risk, you know, endeavour. But in a way, if you're lucky enough to be able to pay your heating bills and keep your family going through that time, I'd rather do something, painful as it is, that I cared about, and expose myself to that, because if for me, somewhere in that risk taking is what, you know, is what life is all about for me. Not maybe for everybody, but it is for me.
Yeah, definitely.
I understand that, and again, it comes down to what you choose. Like you mentioned about soap operas and things like that, and I suppose that's another route that people can take that's more, you know, financially regular and all this sort of thing. Yeah. And that, I think that again, speaks to you're very more. You seem to come across more of a more about the heart and the soul, you know, rather than some of the material aspect of.
Yeah. I mean, because there comes a point very early on where you think, actually, why am I doing this? The real thrill, the real leap of the heart I get is from people doing the stuff, from seeing it out there, from it being on there, from me meeting someone who says, oh, I had a mate of yours who was in a play, and I'm going to go and see it.
There's one locally, isn't there?
Yeah, and little things like that where you kind of think, yeah, it's out there. This kid you had 20 years ago is still out there running in the field, and actually, it's, you know, that production will earn me, because that particular play earns money for charity every time it's on. It's part of the deal way back.
Oh, really?
And
That you set up.
Yeah. So there's a third of all the royalties that we get from that play, or anything that involves that particular, for Calendar Girls, goes towards blood cancer research. So it always has done.
That's amazing. From the musical. Is it, because it's on, when I said locally, I don't know, do you know when it's actually on?
No, I don't know. I did see it.
I'll tell you what I'll try and do is get them on the page, I'll try and find out and then put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and they will run with that play and make it their own, and they will do it in a way that's different to any other production. That's the great thing. That it's not like, you know, for me, it's not like putting on a CD of a movie. That whatever they do, then, you know, in that village hall in Frodsham will never be done again, because the cocktail of what those guys bring to it, their own story, that's the magical thing. That it's revisited every time it comes out of the earth, which is fantastic.
And then it must be amazing that, you know, we were talking before about the ripple effect and how people are affected in ways sometimes that you don't expect. You know, that's a lot of life, isn't it? But when you've done a show and you've done, you know, a play, and then, as you said, they put their own spin on it, but it's got your script still, doesn't it? And then somebody's sitting in that audience, and you don't know how many people, what they get from it, you know, how it affects their life, how it affects their thinking of things, because relating to people, you know, it's
exactly.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Exactly. You no idea what's being brought into the room, and you know, about 10 years ago, somebody got in touch with me and said, "Look, will you come and be a guest? We're having a big get together of all the people, or not everybody, but anybody who's ever done that play, Calendar Girls the play on stage. They've hired this room in Yorkshire, and all these people who put the play on, we're going to meet."
Right.
And you walk into this room, and I thought, well, do they care enough to meet, really, to bother? And these hundreds of people turned up who put this play on from all over the country, all over, you know. And they had speakers, and they had people from the charity who it raised money for, and I got up and spoke. And there were, you know, all these people who, you know, all played the same part, from amazing. Isle of Man to, to Wales to, you know, they were all saying, "What did you do?" "Oh, right, I don't know, I did it like that." But actually, you realise they did that because that plays different maybe from others, but actually they got something else out of that, being that unity. And again, with theatre, as opposed to maybe other forms, you get these little bubbles of community, of proximity, of people coming together and actually being close to each other, and it gets very intense at that time. And in terms of bringing people together, if for no other reason, the power of theatre actually, at whatever level, creates this these little intense bubbles of family for a short period of time. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes you will find people who you will stay with for life, and actually even on television, when I was in my 20s, I wrote a television series called Preston Front, and we did 3 series of that, and actually I look at it now, and I'll do a quiz still that was set up in lockdown with 4 people who were on that show, and that was 30 years ago now, and they're still, just everybody, those friendships, accidentally, and if they hadn't got that audition, that friendship would never have happened. This accidental creation of family, it's carried on, and theatre does that all the time. It gets very intense. It's a bit like adults find, that thing at school when you maybe went on a holiday camp or went away, and you had that very intensive thing of being, everybody's moved out of their home environment, and suddenly this is, for a while, not forever, this is your new home, this is your new family, and how intense that was, and how, potentially, I can remember going on my first ever music camp, spent for a week with people who wanted to do music, and my mum and dad said, I got back in the car, I'd been surrounded by people, we'd write these parts, and people would just say, I'll play it, and I remember standing, the first time and probably only time ever conducting an orchestra of kids whose parts me and my mate had spent writing an arrangement of a pop song, and they were all playing, and I was conducting at the front. And there was a point where I just put, oh shit! I was so enraptured by what I was hearing. It probably wasn't that good, but my God, how it felt in here. And actually, I just completely forgot, and my mates at the back going, conducting, oh yeah. They didn't need me.
That's what it's about, isn't it? A life sometimes is those moments. They feed you, don't they? Something that I like when you said before about the commonality between people, and I think you get that whether it's the theatre, someone goes to see the same show, or they go to see a concert or something. You have this. There's like an enhanced similarity between everyone, isn't it? So everyone then feels, or a football match maybe, obviously if you're on the same side, but they then feel they're able to say, oh, you're right, a bit more, or smile at each other. Whereas something that we could really do with is people realising that if they live in the same town, that's such a huge commonality, right? Yeah. You've chosen to live there, even if you've lived there all your life, you've chosen to live in that place. Yeah. So everyone you're seeing who lives in that place, you've all chosen to live in that place. Yeah. So you've got that. I think we've got a better way to go before we get to that.
It is, and it's, because the fear at the back of people's minds is the adverse of that little card, which is that they want something from you. Yes. If people open the door, it's because there's another agenda. And saying there is no other agenda. It's just it's literally, it's exactly what you say. It's like if you were in a football match, you'd say, "Can't believe he did that," and you would engage a conversation because we know it's about that. Yeah. And in a town, you've just got to think that is just about happiness or just opening a dialogue for no other reason than it's a dialogue. That's it.
Just saying hello.
That's it.
Just saying hello. That's it. Smiling. That's it.
Yeah.
People say to me, "Why are you so smiley?" Because because that's how I am. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
We love you smiling. Over the last couple of weeks, you wouldn't believe how many people that I've either seen in here or somewhere, and they said, "Oh, I know Junior." When they say I know Junior, they always smile when they say I know.
Yeah. Massive. It's hugely important.
So, what do you think you obviously you've covered about why you get your motivation, what have you. So is that what you say you get most satisfaction from when you come up with, or the other things coming away from work in your life that like something particular that you get a lot of satisfaction from?
It isn't all work, and I think I get a huge satisfaction from, as they say, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child, and I'd expand that to be say you're only as happy as the unhappiest person you love. And actually, if there's people in that circle who are unhappy, or coping with things, as long as you're, you know, are aware of that, you know, to a degree, you know, the happiness you get is of being able to be of use in that scenario. So there's lots of peripheral things, you know, the privilege of having a garden, the privilege of living next to a forest, the privilege of being able to get out and to be, you know, fit and get out and to be able to, you know, walk in there, you know, all of these. In fact, you know, the big slap in the face for me is always being the thing I kind of go to sleep every night thinking is just remember what a privilege normality is. And it's only when it's taken away, or in any sense, opportunity, at any level, do you think,
that's
wow.
That's crazy actually, because Junior came in this morning and he said he's gonna do a song after, and the song is you don't know what.
You never know what you got till it's gone.
Exactly. And it's, you know, we will be so much happier as a species of, you know, insects living on a rock if we would understand or remember that the things that we take for granted are not for granted, and that it would be great to not feel that, you know, that we only feel their presence when we start to feel their loss, you know.
That's true. What do you think about, you've touched on it a little bit, I think, about your thinking and yourself being self-critical and whatnot. I would imagine that in your industry it sometimes can be quite all-consuming. So how do you think your work affects your overall well-being, you know, emotionally, mentally, physically?
I think it absolutely does, because of that, the constituent, that strata of care that runs through it means that you are exposed, and that you are there's an endemic vulnerability that comes along with all of this, and vulnerability is a key word, because your vulnerability is something that actually makes you viable as a writer. It is, in a way, it's the strata that actually counts. It's the thing that makes you maybe not entirely, but it's the thing that makes you aware of other people's situations and possibly makes you more alive to the potential, the dramatic potential in other people's lives that maybe they don't see. And I've spent my life talking to people who don't realise how fabulous they are, or how extraordinary their lives are, because maybe that particular nerve in that writers have is closer to the skin, and actually, you know, the privilege you have is that you will bruise more easily, and you've got to use that, and also be aware of how to deal with it when it happens in a bad way, because it inevitably will.
You seem to have a lot of empathy, which that's part of it.
I think it's very difficult. I mean, a lot of writers are different. They write different. That's why the world is so, you know, rich in those terms. Is that certain writers will have a very different colour to the way that they write, and there are kinds of things that I know I couldn't turn my hand to. A kind of colours of drama. And you write in a way the only thing that you can do is don't try and fake it. Just absolutely write honestly from your heart, and be really honestly frank about what you enjoy. And it's not necessarily, you know, right from the start. I've always, whenever I tried to write, it's always had comedy in it. Comedy has been in the mix, and that's not because I desperately wanted to make people laugh. It's not actually that I'm any good at telling. I'm the world's worst teller of jokes. I can't tell jokes at all. But actually, I suppose partly I've found that comedy is the natural catalyst for the conveyance of a story for me. And so people come up to me and say, you know, the interesting thing about your stuff is that it's very warm. Sometimes they'll say it's too warm. Sometimes it's exactly the right level of, you know. But there is a warmth about the way that people act towards each other. And I don't see that, because for me that is point and squirt. That's what I'm writing now. The very same with the same level of lack of thought as I did on that first night, being told to write that 2 minutes of dialogue. Because
but that comes from, if that comes from your heart, and that's where then that's where the warmth is coming from, isn't it? Because you're an empathetic person.
I think partly that, and partly that's the way I've been brought up. That's the kind of group that I've been involved with, you know, and to a degree, I suppose we all are slightly what we've been made of in the friendship groups we had, and the kind of relationship we had with your parents. All of that will go in that mix. It will all come out. And some people, you know, it's inexact. You can't necessarily say if you've had quite a distressing and fractured relationship with your parents, that's how your writing's going to come out. It will often come out the absolute opposite, because you will, you know, those people who've had tricky relationships with their parents will have phenomenal ones with their kids, because they think, I'm not doing that again. It doesn't necessarily carry on. You are always that intermediary, and you will I think you process where you come from in that way, and you've no idea where that pinball's going to go. And I think for me, in terms of writing, that's just what it is. You know, I find it. I suppose selfishly, I want to spend time with people that amuse me, that I like. And when I look back at the things that I'm looking at now, even though some of the stories aren't necessarily all warm corporate comedies, in their subject matter, they'll all be dealt with kind of through comedy, through a prism of comedy. I can't not do that. I tried once, and I wrote the world's first ever comedy about homelessness, because I couldn't actually, you know, somebody commissioned me to write a play, and said, and it's the only time it's ever happened, big warning flag, we need to write a play about homelessness in London. Okay. And of course I couldn't write that, but what I could write you is 6 characters who were homeless, and I wrote about those people, and of course I wanted to empathise with those guys. I needed to understand why they were where they were, and actually the natural way that I told those stories was through humour, and actually at that time I kind of thought, from now on, just if you're going to write a play about homelessness, don't set out to write a play about homelessness. Write a play about Dave.
Yeah.
Right, write a play about him, and then let's see where he takes you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a true path for me, and that's what I've spent my life doing. I've never really known, you know, in detail what the theme of a play was going to be. It's always the incipient thing has always been something that makes me laugh and makes me think, oh, what? Oh, yeah, no, that. You know, a friend of mine once introduced me to a relative who started talking about his job, and he said, I've got this mark on the side of my face, and I got it from sprout burn at work. And I went, what? You know, sprout burn. It's where it's like tag, but we play it in the supermarket depot with frozen sprouts in the dark. What? And of course, and I said, what else do you have? You never, turkey rollerball, you never play that right. What we do, we get frozen turkeys that are a bit damaged, and then if you send them down the aisle and you send them at speed, they'll go like, and it unlocked this gallery of extraordinary games that these guys play in at 3 o'clock in the morning in these food depots. For them, it was just what they do at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
you know, for me, it was like, what? And of course, that is funny. It's not a play, but of course, the play behind it will be. That's the door you go through when you start talking about why, how did you end up here, why are you playing these games, what do the games mean, you know, what's the power and all of those the ancillary things, that world behind why you do this extraordinary thing, that will come. But the thing that makes me excited about it, and hopefully the thing that makes people buy tickets, is people playing rollerball with a giant frozen turkey. You know, that's what I want to go and see.
I like that.
Well, I went to buy a turkey. I'm going to buy a turkey. And I'm going to, you know. I wonder if this has been playing rollerball.
Just not like fun. One of the main aims of these weekly things, as I said to you before, was to try and open up the conversations about the phrase. We hate the phrase, don't we?
Yeah.
So this stigmatised mental health.
Whereas in reality, it's just like physical health. We all have mental health, we all have physical health, and then it's how it is, what kind of state it's in at any particular time. But what we're trying to do is open up the conversation. So with yourself, what does the whole mental health and well-being, what does it mean to you? You know, how does it correlate to your life?
I think because it's a constant issue, really. If somebody who spends their life on their own, in the echo chamber of their own room, of your job is a very solitary job. It isn't a communal job until you have spasms of that. But largely, it's you and your own. That what you have to learn, I suppose, is to be slightly kinder on yourself in terms of your own self-monitoring. That actually, that you always have a choice about how you view your place in the world, your level of perceived success, and that it's like other people looking out through a shop window and they see you inside and they think everything is fantastic and it's working really well. And actually, you just have to put yourself, sometimes, just go out the shop and look at yourself through that shop window and say, look, this is how it seems to everybody else, right? Just don't ever, don't feel that you're alone in that scenario, that everybody, I've not met anybody who hasn't felt that degree of vulnerability and self-criticism. It's all to do with how you deal with it, and actually, for me, dealing with it is all about reminding myself that the reason that I got into this was because it's joyful, and it was in this extraordinary privileged position to be doing a hobby for a job. And the danger is that you just start to see it as a job, and you forget the hobby bit of it. You actually forget the joy of it, and it's just continually reminding yourself of the privilege that you have being where you are, and that the opportunity that it's better to care. It's absolutely better to care. Just don't. That more often than not, you have a choice about the degree to which you're wounded, much more than you think you are. And actually, you kind of feel that your own wounding is given by some other force, and so many times it's you. It's no. People will come to me and say, they will say things, and you suddenly think, oh my God, you think that I'm sitting here thinking, like exactly what you said earlier, that your life has been one long parade of success. And the problem is that unless you're in the shop, people don't see the amount of failure there has been, the amount of disappointment. And so, don't feel that you're the only one who's got that catalogue of disappointment and failure. But also, just learn how to handle that, and not think that the failure of one will affect the failure of the other. It's that sports psychology thing of thinking, well, that didn't work. You have to put that away very quickly, and just because also, not only does it not matter in terms of what you're doing next, but actually, in 5 years' time, there might be something extraordinary still lurking in what that failure was, and it will have its time.
Yes.
And there's a number of things that were failures down the line that people have said, no, at the time. And then 5 years later, oh yeah, that's great. And you think, oh yeah. Well, where were you the first time? But actually, the world changes. The world constantly changes, and tomorrow is constantly different from today. The whole scenario, emotionally, professionally. If I tried to sell the idea of doing an original movie musical 15 years ago, I wouldn't have got through the door. And then something, accidentally by the way, will have happened. A movie will have got through, and people will have watched it, and suddenly the world goes, and it's that fickle. You know, nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. The
That's
world will
it,
change
yeah.
like
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
suddenly, oh yeah, no, we love those.
Yeah.
I think something when you were saying that the failures and the successes. So many people, I think, unfortunately nowadays, when you're talking about failures and successes, so many people in their lives, their successes, I don't think that they really give them the credence that they should, you know, because it's almost like too many people believe that you're only worthy, you're only special if you are this, if you were this, if you earn this, if you. And I think that's something that really we have to try and. It's okay. Like your success is one way that I look at it is a mountain. You know, everyone's mountain is different. For some people, on some days, your mountain to climb is getting up and having a shower.
Oh yeah.
And that's a success, and it's around. It's got to be celebrated, I think.
Yeah.
And then the other part of what you were saying as well was the mask that people wear. You know, social media has brought this to the fore. When you were saying about looking at other people's lives, and this goes on all the time, and this is driving actually part of this self-hate, because people are unfortunately looking at someone else's life on Instagram, for example, or you know, not just Instagram. Any social media, and they're seeing something that person is projecting, and that person is wanting to project the happy self that my life is great. So the other person is then seeing, and the reality is that everybody struggles, everybody's human. It doesn't matter what level you are in the game that you see as life. You know, we all have similar problems at some point, some way, don't we?
It's the danger of emotional airbrushing. It's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
That actually,
Emotional
you know,
airbrushing,
you watch people. I've watched kids, you know, do this, and then the phones go down, and you think, you know.
What you see sometimes, when I see some of these shows on TV, when young kids are coming up and saying, when they're 18, 19, and saying, they say the words, this is I really want this, and this is my last chance. This is if I don't get to do it now. At 18, I'm thinking to myself, I'm 62, and I've been playing music since I was 21, and my success is me just playing music, not making any money, just me just enjoying playing a gig and enjoying the feeling that I get from playing a gig, no matter if someone says to me it's rubbish, that was rubbish, or if they say the enjoyment I get from playing my guitar and singing. That's my success for me, and it worries me when I see young kids saying at 18, oh, this is my last chance. I'm thinking, what is their mental state going to be if they get rejected and they're told just by one person, that's not good enough? Are they going to feel that that's going to be the whole throughout their life?
Where do I go?
Exactly. Further than that is the whole clicks now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not just the pressure of, for example, if you're talking about talent shows or whatever level it is, you know, that pressure. But now it's also the social media that it's all. You see, I hear it so much that it's this need to feel appreciated and liked on social media, which is translated to you just by people liking or sharing or clicking. And this is creating this feeds into this what you're just talking about. And reality, I think I saw something the other day that said about gratitude, being grateful for what you have at that moment in whatever sense it is, whether it's physically or emotionally, you know, people around you. That's one of the secrets to happiness. You know, to feel that happiness with what you've got. You can't go and buy that. You can't. No. No matter what level how much money you've got, I don't believe maybe you could.
No, it's true. It's true, and actually, you know, it comes down to the only kind of concrete thing I suppose that I've learned is that you have more choice than you think you have in your own happiness, and actually you don't. You don't sit around like a writer. You don't sit around waiting for ideas. You have to be out there. You have to. For me, it's. You know, you can sit in your room and then write about being a writer for the rest of your life, or you can get out there and live in a world where nobody else really gives a toss about what you do, apart from they may go and see it sometimes. That's why I've always loved living here and not lived in any closer to the machinery, because actually, I love talking to people. I love being with people. I love hearing about their lives, and also because incidentally, I've discovered so much that has moved me, amused me, that has fed into that you don't realise at the time, but you suddenly start writing something, and you oh my God, that's what that guy said to me in that railway station 4 months ago. You know?
As a writer, you're always listening. I mean, just taking, for instance, talking about what success means. I don't want to talk about myself, but I just mentioned this because last weekend was West KB Live. All the musicians get together and play music and raise money for the food banks and do it free of charge. So I drove to West Kirby yesterday, played 2 gigs in 2 pubs. But in the last pub I played in, the PA wasn't working, and the fella came and he's got it sorted and started playing. There's a bunch of young lads sat in the corner, played a few songs, and then one lad said, "Oh, do you know this song?" I said, "No, but I could play this one." And I played it. The England game's coming up, and this guy said to me, he said, "Mate," he said, "I love that. Any chance of you coming back to us? I'll give you 100 quid, and you could play while watching the footy." And all. I said, "Look, mate, no, thanks for the offer, but I'm going home." You know what I mean? But that was those lads. They really loved. They enjoyed it. They wanted to give me 100 quid. I should have said to them, "Donate it to the charity." You know, I said, "Nah, I don't want your money, mate." You know, but that was a success.
Yeah.
You know, it was great. You know,
and it's just acknowledging that is a success and allowing yourself to acknowledge what you define as success, not what somebody else defines as success is the key.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, thank you ever so much.
A pleasure.
It's been really
pleasure.
Really
great to meet
you. Yeah, fantastic.
Really good. Yeah. Enjoyable conversation. Really good.
And I think that hopefully, whatever aspect people, if there's anyone watching it now or later, whatever aspect they want to get something from it, I think there's a few ways to choose really, because the personal side of it, and then you talked a little bit about the work as well.
People can draw inspiration, can't they? You know what I mean? To realise that you can be who you are and be yourself.
Yes.
And just
as
you said,
don't think just because somebody has had success with one thing that they are successful either in their own eyes, then it's a great danger for both sides. Either side of that shop window is perilous. If you feel that this is somehow a guarantee of success forever, or indeed that I perceive it as success, or that other people actually think you've gone through some portal and actually
it's keeping grounded, isn't it? You've kept grounded. It's keeping your feet firmly on the ground, and your family, and understanding as long as you understand who you are as a person and keep grounded and not believe the hype. Some people actually believe the hype and they believe their own self-importance, and that's the kind of problem
it's perilous, because of course what will happen then is that you will stop getting the vital feedback that you need, is people actually asking you, "What do you mean by this? What do you just?" And they will just say, "Yeah, that's great." That's equally dangerous, is that people just tell you it's great. And I keep saying, look, whenever we start a new project, anybody can say anything, right? Because the 8 terrible ideas that you come up with, we will never get to the 9th one that's brilliant unless you go through those 8. So anybody can say anything, but also just if you don't understand it, tell me. Don't go through keep going as though I have access to some eternal truth, or anybody else, because we don't, and ultimately we will get found out, because if the audience don't understand it, they just won't come.
My wife is brutal. She's brutal. When any song I write, I could think it's the best song, and I play it. She's the first person I say, "I've just written this," and she'll go, "No." And she'll tell me exactly what. But that's it. And so I know before I leave the house. Before it goes anywhere. If she tells me that it's rubbish, I believe it, because she tells me straight.
Great.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic.
Enjoy.
Brilliant.
Great to meet you guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Superb.
I'll see you out.
That's all right. I'll head off to York.